Coming up on the Branding Deep Dive podcast.
We had one where it's like there's a coffee bean across the street, and we were worried. Just some context about it, we were worried about them because they had a drive through, and we don't have a drive through because we're like all about that, like the more like sophisticated cup of coffee. But
Yeah.
um, so like we put one like right in front of their place, which is like close to us, but it's like you don't get your coffee from a drive through, do you? And it was yeah, it was like right there, like on their way to like us. So it's like a good way to like bring attention to ourselves, and also just let people know that we're there, because also the other thing is that when you don't have that, a lot of people will drive by you not having any idea like that you were there.
This is Ahmed Cheema, and welcome to the Branding Deep Dive podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast where we have in-depth discussions about what brands are doing well to drive customer loyalty and how you can take those principles and apply them to your own brand. Today, we're talking to Zain Siddiqi. Zain Siddiqi is the owner of Where You Bean Coffee, which is a coffee shop in Phoenix, Arizona. He's also the president of Transcending Tradition, which is an online publication dedicated to examine modernity through a Muslim lens. Zain started out at Where You Bean Coffee by picking up some shifts as a barista, and in 2020, he had the opportunity to become an owner, so he knows the business in and out. In this episode, we dive deep into how to separate yourself as a small business, how to drive traffic to a brick and mortar business, getting employees bought in, reviews, and much, much more. Now, here's Zain Siddiqi. Zain Siddiqi, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ahmed, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this discussion. It's something that I am genuinely very interested in, and I think I kind of talked to you a little bit about why I'm interested in it. But definitely, I'm looking to learn a lot from you, pick your brain on a lot of these things
Sure.
and concepts. Before we get into that and we really dive deep here, for the audience that may not be familiar with who you are and what you do, can you give them a brief introduction?
For sure. My name is Zain Siddiqui. I'm a resident of Phoenix, Arizona. I've been here for the last 16 years or so. Um, I own a coffee shop. I run it with my mom right now. Since 2020, we've been running it. And on the side, I'm also a graduate student at ASU's business school in management. I finished that up in May, inshallah. I'm a political science graduate. Um, I'm just involved in a few other organizations as well. I run a nonprofit named Transcending Tradition, which I think we'll talk about a little bit too, which is an online publication. And then also, I'm on the board of my local masjid, one of the bigger mosques in the area. So yeah, that's kind of what occupies my time for the most part.
Sounds like you're really busy, man.
Better busy than bored. So alhamdulillah.
You said you started off as a barista. I understand that this was a family business that you've
Yeah,
kind of been in.
yeah.
So if you could just kind of paint the picture for us how you
Sure.
how you started, and it's called Where You Bean Coffee, right? So for the
Yeah,
people
yeah,
that
yeah. So that's the name of the
uh,
coffee shop. Where You Bean Coffee. I can't take credit for the name. So it was actually my uncle who started it back when I was in high school. So he opened it up in 2013. Um, and it's in a suburb of Phoenix or it's in Phoenix proper actually, but it's in like a town area called Awatuki, which is kind of in the middle of like all the major like boroughs of Phoenix. Um, so it's a pretty good location. He established it back in 2013. I started off as a barista in high school, just helping him out. That was the biggest struggle, like early on, is like finding people, uh, not even just qualified to work, but just people to work in the first place, right? Um, so I started doing that in high school. Then like through college, I was staying around helping out. A lot of times I'd be running or doing like multiple jobs, um, because like I had a certain career path in mind for myself that didn't involve this.
hmm,
I was always like, okay, this is my uncle. I'm going to help him out. He needs people to put in some shifts. And keep in mind also, so this kind of goes into the story too. So he was also the executive director of the CARE Arizona chapter here, the Council on American Islamic Relations. So the coffee shop was like a side hustle, so it did need like a good level of attention from, other people who weren't necessarily him, just because like that time
Mm.
commitment. So I mean, he kept it afloat, mashallah. Like he kept it. It was at the top of the ratings early on, despite being strapped for time, and effort. And he's a father of three. He's a married man, busy guy, mashallah. So,
Seems like that's a recurring theme in the family, huh? Super busy people.
yeah. Alhamdulillah, it's like it's a good thing to do, I think. But yeah, so that was kind of like what the outlook of it was like, and it was running like that for years up until 2020. And then he kind of decided that he wanted to focus specifically on the civil rights his civil rights career, um in that he wants the coffee shop to be given its due. He wants it to be given its proper, have people who are like fully invested in it and taking care of it. So he decided to sell it to my mom and myself in 2020. Ironically, like right before the pandemic, March 1st was the day we acquired
Mm.
it. Actually,
He got
uh,
you, man. He tricked
yeah,
you.
I know, right? It's a running joke that he kind of set us up. He knew something that we didn't. It was before any lockdowns were happening in Phoenix or anything like that. We all thought, COVID was a joke, whatever. But so we took over in 2020, and at first, obviously, it was rough given like there were lockdowns, government or like shutdowns. We were actually the shop shut down for some time, actually, like in the summer of 2020.
Mm.
Uh, but the silver lining of that was that we got to go in there, like because we were closed, we got to go and work in terms of renovating the shop, what it looked like, kind of reinventing the look of it a bit, while also maintaining that consistency, because that's the thing that was beneficial about this business, is that we weren't starting from the ground up. We were inheriting an already existent customer base, an already inherent group of suppliers that we liked and wanted to use. Um, so it was an easier flow in compared to like starting it right up like right before the pandemic. So we got to change some stuff around. That was a silver lining of it. And then we opened back up first curbside only, and then we opened up back like the full inside in about September of 2020. And since then we've been fully open. Alhamdulillah, things have been better than they ever were before in terms of just like sales numbers and like people who are coming in. We're getting a lot of new customers. Um, and I got to give a lot of thanks in terms of that to my mom, especially my brother was who right now is putting in more work just by nature of our school schedules right now than I am. Our operations manager, his name is Mustafa. He's a great guy, and all our other employees too. Like they put in a lot of work, and we couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah, there's a lot you just dropped there. I think one of
Yes.
the things that no, you're good. You're
Yeah.
good. It was awesome. I think one of the things that I want to start with, really diving into, is if I'm a new coffee shop today, how do I go about acquiring customers? Right? Like you guys started Where You Bean Coffee. I'm sure. Are there Starbucks in the area? Dunkin'
Yeah, yeah.
Donuts?
There's a Starbucks across the street from us, and there's a Dunkin' Donuts and a I don't know if you guys have it, but it's called Coffee Bean Tea and Leaf. It's
Uh,
pretty it's a chain up the West Coast, so they are a chain, like they're known to be a chain too. So there's that also like right across the street too. So yeah,
and Where You Bean is not a franchise, right? It's just a
no, it's just
individual.
standalone shop right now.
Yeah. So how do you even come into this marketplace? Because I think one of the things that holds a lot of people back at the small business level, not even coffee, I'm talking about in general, is
Yeah,
like, oh, I see one big player, I see another big player. Like, how can I even carve a space in this market? Right. Like it's such a, Starbucks is here, Dunkin' Donuts is here. What am I going to do? Right.
for sure.
And so I want to pick your brain on this as someone that's an example of doing it, right? Like, how are you, uh, how do you approach that, right? How do you carve out your little brand in the space of these big chains?
Yeah, it's definitely daunting for a lot of people. It's always like, even when we're looking at like other potential second locations, like it's something that crosses our mind. It's like, oh, but there's a Starbucks in that area, or there's like these other chains in that area. And people a lot of times who are attached to chains, they stay pretty loyal to those chains just out of convenience and just I guess that reliability, right? I think a few things, right? So pandemic was obviously horrible for a lot of people in a lot of different ways, but there are some silver linings that we can take from that. Number one was that people really want to support small business right now.
Mm,
A lot of customers like supporting local businesses, just by nature of them being local. Even if they've never gone before, even if they haven't heard about it, they're just like, okay, I want coffee. Let me look for a place that's not Starbucks, that's not, Dunkin' Donuts. That's not a chain, right? That's not, these are the people who are mostly suffering from what was happening over the past 2 years. So capitalizing on that, and it's kind of like you have a lot of people that are just walking into your shop, walking into your business, just by nature of this level of good-heartedness that they want to support, like the smaller guy, right?
mm,
Um, so in terms of that, that's like your kind of entry point is that there's always going to be people wanting to support local and small businesses just because that empathy factor, and also there is a quality factor that they expect that you care more about your product, you care more about the customers themselves too, you care more about the business. So they know or they assume that they're going to get a better quality product than somewhere corporate. There might be fewer choices, right? That's the thing that these corporations can do a lot of times is that they can throw out like a ton of choices for you to have. They have a bunch of diversity in their inventory to sell, but they know they're getting or they expect to be getting a higher quality. And the thing that's the onus is on us as the business owner, as the people working in these small businesses is to provide that high quality product. So how are you differentiating yourself from these bigger places? And I mean that's the question that you ask. So at least when I'm talking specifically about where you bean coffee, our whole thing is about being like in business they call it a differentiation strategy, where it's like, okay, it might be not the cheapest cup of coffee. It's not going to be it's not going to be a $1 Circle K cup that you can get somewhere else, but it's going to be a very high quality cup of coffee, and you're paying good money for a very good cup of coffee. You're paying good money for beans that that are really great, a machine that's being operated, that's being taken care of, that's a high end type of machine where it's baristas who are well trained and care about what they're doing. That's the thing with a lot of like these big businesses too, that we might touch on it later, but it's like people working in, like, even just the regular employees, not even like the owners or the management or whatever it might be, just the baseline lowest level employee, they have far more care about the business and the product and the trajectory of the business than someone who is like a low level employee at like Starbucks, for example, right?
mm.
um even up until management only cares about management of the corporations care more about like the you know am I doing well enough to keep my job? Basically, the only people who really care about the performance of that shop at the end of the day are the owners of that shop, and of course the franchise owner themselves. Whereas over here, you have every single employee is kind of invested in you know making this the best possible version that it can be. So you have uh, basically, I guess it's in a long form answer. You kind of have to excel in every possible way that you can to give
Mm.
yourself an advantage over these bigger places, right? And also at the end of the day, you also have to accept that those big places aren't necessarily your competition per se, right? Your main competition is going to be like the other small coffee shops, right? um but that kind of
Mm.
attracts people away from those places where it's like they come to our shop, they drink they have like a good latte, whatever, and then they can never go back to Starbucks again because we ruined their standards of taste. I've had that said to people a lot. They're like, I can never go back to any of these places again just because like it's such a high standard of coffee that you're making for me. So they
Mm.
know like desserts are high quality and are made great. So it's like they really like the food. They like the vibe of everything, and just like that, it all plays into this aspect of like we want to support small businesses, and we're getting a better quality product than what the bigger places can offer.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying And correct me if I'm not capturing this right, but it sounds like you're saying that if we break it down into like the customer journey, pre-post, pre-purchase, purchase, post-purchase, what really is helping you nowadays in the coffee space and small business space is that there is a sentiment that people want to support small businesses. So you're getting increased awareness just by the fact that you are a small business nowadays. And then from there, once you get that awareness, people come in the door. What really differentiates you is the purchase, the experience of the coffee, the quality, and really just the quality of the product is what's helping you kind of maintain those customers and retain those customers and make them coming back again. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a great summary of my rant there. But yeah,
No, I think that's super important for the audience and myself to pick up is that like, look, there are different trends that may be happening, and if like I think you see this in content creation all the time, right? Like people are on TikTok, they want to do the next dance or next trend or whatever, and then they
yeah,
may get like a little bit of a bump, but if you don't have a profile there that is providing some sort of value and is good consistently and providing some kind of quality content consistently, you're not going to convert those people into lifetime followers,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like you can ride a wave, but it's not going to sustain. So you got to be conscious of these waves and conscious of these things that are happening, and then make sure that you have the quality to back it. So super powerful lesson there. Thank you for sharing, Zain. Um, One of the things that you did bring up is uh, the people being invested in the mission, and I think right now I don't know how it is in Phoenix, but like over here, like we can't even staff our McDonald's and our fast food chains anymore, right? Like there's a great shortage of labor, and I think they're calling it like the Great
Yeah,
Resignation. A lot of people are not.
it's happening here.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it's super hard to find talented people to work, and it's costing more. And right, like how do you, as a small business owner, what are some strategies, what are some best practices that we can take to make sure number one we're able to attract people that actually want to work for us, and then number two, once we have them on the team, how do we make sure that they are invested in the project like you're mentioning, right? Like I think part of the whole big business is not like how do we avoid someone coming into our small business and then feeling the same way, like instead of caring about the quality they care about just keeping their job.
for sure. Um, I think there's a few different things that kind of contribute to that. At least for us, I would say it's this kind of like this top down approach where it's like the owners are with you working like every day. Like you see the people who are making these big decisions, you're listening to them and their suggestions too. At least when talking about like the current staff and like who we have, and like after a while, once they get hired and after they're in this environment, they realize, okay, it's not just like a laissez-faire type, laid back management. It's like, okay, this man is working, X amount of hours. He's putting in a ton of shifts. And they see like, if you're putting up a high quality, not just that you're there, but also high quality work ethic itself. Like, are you, making the drinks to the best of your ability? Are you cleaning up properly? Are you, treating customers, with, great respect and dignity, and like, basically like, in like, if with the owner, my mom doesn't when she's since she's my co-owner, she doesn't make drinks, but she's the one who's baking everything, so she's there all the time. She's baking food, keeping an eye on it, and everything. But she's there consistently. She's interacting with the employees. It's not like just to pop in once every week or so, just to see how things are going. Collect cash from the register and just dip out. It's
Hmm.
like our involvement really helps foster that idea of like care into the business, because if they see that you're invested, then they're gonna have some level of investment too. Um, and I think going back to the first part of the question, how to find people of high quality, it's tough. Um, the thing is, with our industry, it's pretty easy to teach and learn, and it's a lot of like you learn it on the fly type thing. Where it's not like I need to have people who, because I started off, I knew not a single thing about coffee, but like, I mean, and then look at me today, like complete 180. But like you start somewhere basically, right?
Mhm.
Um, where it's like this is something that, and if we have like a good like curriculum as a business and we're able to teach them this, um and just by also assessing the reality that it is like slim pickings right now with how short, and it's not yet, like you said, it's not just in like fast food. Also, it's like teachers are hard to come by. Employees at almost every level are difficult to come by right now, besides medicine. But like that's tough. So it's adjusting to that, but also looking for the type of uh, high quality people. And with high quality people, the thing I look for the most whenever I'm interviewing people is like a level of like inquisitiveness, because that shows that they kind of care about like what they want to like. Do they want to learn about what they're doing? Because most of the people we interview, are fairly inexperienced. A lot of people are like in high school or college, like they just want a job for like a few years just to like as they get ready to get into their career, just to make some money on the side. Um, but like that inquisitiveness is like a big thing for me, because it shows that you want to learn, and you're accepting that I know nothing about this industry. And even if you do know a little bit, inquisitiveness about processes, inquisitiveness about the specific like company that we're using, um, about the history of the shop, things like that, where it's like um, and then that aspect, and then as you see them like going along, like after you kind of make that hire and keeping an eye on people, like are they like putting in a little like extra work, or not extra work, but like are they going above and beyond, um in terms of enthusiasm? Are they uh are they taking it seriously? That's the main thing. It's kind of like that's what I like to see the most, and I think that helps out. I mean, it depends on your industry too, but that's just been my experience with coffee.
Hmm. Oh, those are really good tips. I think the curiosity is something, or inquisitiveness, as you mentioned, is something that I think no matter what field you're in, that's going to set you
Yeah,
up for success. Just being a continuous learner, I think, is one of the ultimate skills nowadays.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I mean, look at like Elon Musk. But
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, do you guys have a marketing budget? Do you guys spend money on marketing?
We actually don't. Not a ton. Well, we do. Okay. So we have spent money on like local billboards, and like bus stops. Um, but most of our marketing over the last few years has been mostly online stuff.
Mhm.
Like even that was lacking at the beginning. It was mostly word of mouth, and then we started getting more into the online sphere now. So we're really active now on Instagram and Facebook, and that's done a lot. Like we're getting a lot of people like coming in for that. And then we also have, yeah, we've done some stuff with Yelp and Google too, and that kind of helps like with search algorithms and things like that. Um, but we're not dropping like a ton of money on marketing, just because I think as the local shop and as like word of mouth has spread around, um, and like we've just been getting so many more and more people like without putting in that much like money into the marketing aspect. Not to say that it isn't important, it's just we're capitalizing on like these smaller aspects of marketing to bring people in. um but yeah, it's been mostly focused online, with a few also doing events is something that we do that's also marketing, like
Mm.
with schools. So like local schools will like do like a PTA meeting or like like a teacher appreciation thing, and like they'll ask us to bring some coffee and like some desserts. We'll have a stand there and like be there, and that's kind of like a way of marketing, because you're reaching out to an area that maybe people haven't seen you before, when they're like, oh, this cup is really good. Where you guys at? So we've done it with a few places like apartment complexes, schools, things like that, and that's also like in a couple gyms too. And it's just like really tapping into like the local atmosphere, to really
Mhm.
get our name out. That's been a big thing, because there's like chamber of commerces, doing these types of events where it's like you don't have to shell out a ton of cash to like get your name out there, right? That's the thing that I think a lot of people get stuck in is um like feeling the need to like drop a ton of money to, to do various forms of marketing, where a lot of it can be done with like time and effort.
Mm. Yeah, that's really, I think what is evident by what you just mentioned is that you guys have tried a lot of different things. Even if you're not spending a lot of money right now, you guys have tried
Yeah.
and dabbled in a lot of these different areas. So I'm curious, like for someone that is starting a coffee shop or starting a business, what would you recommend? I know, like especially, I think the perspective that we've had on the podcast, I think quite a bit is probably the online business already. But for a brick and mortar business, you actually have a physical location. Where would you recommend doubling down? You've done billboards, you've been at these Chamber of Commerce events, and then you've also done online. Where would you recommend doubling down?
I think definitely starting out, just because like you are starting out and you don't want to shell out a ton like in the beginning, unless you have like investors where you can do that. But even then, like I think the most efficient thing has been number one, investing like time into like a good online space. So whether that means a website, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, being involved and active on these sites, whereas like you're interacting with with people who are engaging with your content, posting pictures, making announcements, stuff like that. Um, that helps bring attention to your space, and you can like put a little bit of money into like the added services that they have with those websites too. Uh, but then also like tapping into that local market where it's like you're going to events, you're reaching out like individually, like you're letting people know that you're there. Um, and if you have money to put in, like with like, because signs are always help actually, like honestly, like they do.
Really?
A lot of times, yeah, like we put up a few like around like a few bus stops. That was our our biggest one, is when we did the bus stop one. We did it around like 4 or 5 bus stops, and like instantly we were just getting people coming in. Some like
Oh
told us,
wow!
"Hey, well, like we saw you at the," like it was just around like every corner. We'd have like funny like catchphrases like on it or something like that. It's like
Oh nice.
we had one where it's like there's a coffee bean across the street, and we were worried. Just some context about it, we were worried about them because they had a drive through, and we don't have a drive through because we're like all about that, like the more like sophisticated cup of coffee. But
Yeah.
um, so like we put one like right in front of their place, which is like close to us, but it's like you don't get your coffee from a drive through, do you? And it was yeah, it was like right there, like on their way to like us. So it's like a good way to like bring attention to ourselves, and also just let people know that we're there, because that's also the other thing is that when you don't have that, a lot of people will drive by you not having any idea like that you were there, right?
Mm,
Um, but I think so having that for people who aren't as into the online space is good, but also remember that a lot of people are very invested into the online space, like in terms of their time and like what they look for when they're looking for a coffee shop. A lot of people, like when I'm in another city, what I do is I type in coffee and I turn my location on and I see what's good, and I look for the local places close to me. um so I think investing in that, and then making sure that you are a good product, and getting people to do reviews. Having good reviews is always like a great thing. Like alhamdulillah, like we've been having great reviews for like um, ever since we've been open. Like always above 4.5, no matter what. Overall, after like hundreds and hundreds of reviews. So when people see that, then they're gonna be like, okay, and they might not even mind going a bit out of their way for you if you're that good, right?
mm.
Um, so that I think the online space is a really, you can do a lot of it for free, which is why I would suggest to a lot of people to do in just when they're starting off, just to like get their foot in the ground, or foot in the water. Sorry, uh, but that's a good way to get yourself started, I would say, and word of mouth,
There,
of course. Yeah, like your own network and stuff like that.
mhm. There's a lot of things that I wanted to double click on here. So
For sure.
the first one is it like even with your billboards, I think one thing that you kind of just brushed over like it's no big deal, but I think is really smart is you guys, the creative you had was actually good, right? And that's why it converted, right? Like
Yeah,
you guys knew how to take that attention and convert it into like people that are, so a lot of people may get a billboard and their messaging is not,
yeah,
people are just like,
bland,
what is this
yeah,
about, right?
yeah,
So I think that's one thing that's super important, that like, hey, think about like, and you guys placed it in the right place too, right? So
yeah,
I think the lesson here that I'm getting is that like, look, all these methods are still effective if you do it right. And what doing
yeah,
it right means is understanding who you're talking to
absolutely.
and communicating the value you provide. So going to the people that are leaving the drive-through and then kind of making a joke saying, hey, do you really get your coffee from a drive-through? Like that's going to work, right? Like,
Yeah,
because you're reaching those people and you're kind of hitting them where it hurts, right? Like you're making fun of them a little bit. But
yeah,
I think what I'm curious about here is, how do you, like, what's your strategy for Instagram and Facebook? You said you guys are active on both of those. Like, do you guys do, so I've seen, just based on the small business I've seen on Instagram, I'm not really on Facebook, but like I've
yeah,
seen them do like giveaways. I've seen
yeah,
them just like, hey, we have a sale happening. And then a lot of it is just like, hey, this person came in, I'm gonna post a picture of them, or like this is a new product, right?
yeah,
Like what is it that you guys are, what is there a deeper strategy behind it, or is it as simple as that?
for sure. So with Instagram, I'm not on it myself. My siblings are the ones who run the Instagram mostly, but from what I've been seeing from it and what people talk about it, and I check up on it every now and then too. And similar to Facebook as well, it's like it is similar to like, okay, so it's like you're gonna have like your announcements for what, like, okay, like we're having a sale for X happening. It's mostly a way for us as a business to communicate with the customer base, right? In a
Mm,
way that's not, they can communicate with us like when they walk into the shop too, but it's also like how are we, communicating to them outside of the shop too. So it's not just about like gaining new customers, but it's also about, keeping the ones that you have engaged in like another level where they're also constantly like, where they're going to be thinking about you because they're seeing you online. They're
mm.
seeing you post the product, right? So a lot of it is just trying to bring in people with we post pictures of like different coffee drinks. If we're doing some new specials, we do those all the time too. Um, any like events that we're going to be at, we do those. We do like a thank you to the whatever organization hosted us. Um, a lot of times it's us sharing people who are tagging us, like they had a meeting at their shop and like they posted it on Facebook or something like that. It's not so much as like focusing on like individuals per se, but it's also like giving like certain employees a feature too, like they add their own little personality to it as well. Maybe they made like one of their favorite drinks and like they're just showing it off, like the drink that they made. um Maybe something like interesting in the shop that we just added. So just kind of like showing like what we're doing, and keeping people like invested in what we're doing. That's been the majority, and then just keeping people like up to date, like with announcements and stuff like that. Like I said, it's not like a hardcore like pushing strategy yet, but like it's mostly to have that level of engagement.
No, I think that's really one thing that I'm getting here is that like a lot of these big businesses like Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, like you're not able to engage with your
Yeah,
local Starbucks offline or like after you leave, right? And so even just having a page, it sounds like what you're saying, even just having a page where you're staying top of mind for your customers and reminding them that you're out there,
yeah,
that will go a long way, because they'll remember the experience they had, they'll come back, they'll
absolutely.
share it again. So and I think that's the same thing with, I started posting clips of my some of these podcasts on Instagram, and honestly, like my first couple, people are supporting, they're your friends, and so they'll watch them, they'll click like,
Yeah,
but my engagement's really gone down. But what I've seen is like when I talk to people, when I run into people, they're like, "Oh, your podcast is really good," and I know they're not listening, but they've seen the clip. So like, so at least like in their
yeah,
minds, I'm staying at top of their mind that they know that Ahmed Cheema has a branding podcast.
yeah.
And so if
Exactly.
I need to talk to someone about branding, I need to go to Chima. right? And
Yeah,
so even if it just serves that purpose, that's more than enough, right? And
absolutely.
so
Yeah, yeah. Because yeah,
um,
it depends on what your goal is in that respect. And that's I'm assuming it's part of what your goal is with that. Like,
yeah, 100%. Next thing I want to talk to you about is reviews. So you briefly touched on this, getting good reviews. You guys have gotten good reviews. I will be like the first to say that getting good reviews is no small feat, right? Like,
yeah,
if you could just kind of take a step back and kind of explain how you're getting these reviews, because it's not as simple, at least from what I've seen, right? Maybe it's different in the coffee space and people are actually going out of their way to review, but like most people are not going out of their way to review stuff. You have to
yeah,
ask for reviews,
yeah.
right? And so, how are you guys approaching making sure that the people are enjoying your stuff are leaving reviews, and uh, how are you approaching that?
So at least lately, our strategy has been we have not been asking people to review because it comes regardless.
Oh, really?
I don't know why. Like, it's just like it's given like with rushes and stuff like that, where it's like kind of like a lot of the times in these busy hours, you don't have as much time to like converse with the customer and stuff like that. But a lot of times with new customers, they a lot of them will review it just without us asking them to. Like and
Mm,
it's not just like a 5-star blank, and it's like 5 stars, and they just give a whole paragraph about why I love this place. Early on, yeah, it was like we were like when I was a barista, I was asking people to review us. um, I remember my uncle always like telling people to review us. Um, but lately, we haven't been focusing on that as much. I mean, it's honestly just like us not, being on top of that. But um, it's just kind of like it really speaks for itself. It's kind of like they walk in, they they walked in because, like I said before, it's a small business. They saw us or they saw us on Google. They saw our bus stop ad. They saw whatever it was that got them to walk inside. They were enthralled with the customer service. That's something that always gets referenced if you read the reviews. It's like they're very fond of like the people
mm,
who are talking to them and serving them, and like they're a lot of people who are walking in like have no idea about. They might not know anything about coffee. They might not know anything about or what they even want. But it's like, okay, based off how we train our baristas, it's like they're going to be a guide for the customer who's unsure, basically. Um, so that's something that always gets talked about a lot is the customer service. And then when they have the drink, they mention the drink that they had, how much they love it. Um, so it really is like it's really done it for itself. And like, and it's not just that, but also like we'll go and look and respond to each and every review and talk
mm,
about why, or reply to them and thank them. And there's that level of engagement that like, okay, we care about these people who are coming in. And even if we do, there's obviously we're not fully 5 stars. There's the occasional review that is not 5 stars. So we're even replying to that. We're trying to figure out what might have been the issue, stuff like that. Even if it's like a completely nonsensical thing, like when there was like when there was like the restaurant lockdown in Arizona, like people were giving us bad reviews because we weren't letting people sit inside. But it's like we legally cannot let you sit inside. There's a mandate in the state of Arizona, in the city of Phoenix, that we cannot let people sit inside the restaurant. So like
that's ridiculous.
even if it is like completely nonsensical like that, it's like we kind of had to address it and like keep in mind you always have to have like your customer service mode on. Like I can't like as much as sometimes people want to, and that's something that also you kind of have to. We were kind of dealing with a lot with the whole COVID thing and like being in a very uh, it's a very politically diverse customer base, if to put it lightly. So it's like you're getting a lot of people who have varying opinions and about given how like I'm kind of veering off a bit, but like dealing with customers in a good way regardless of what they're saying, regardless of how they're treating you, how they're talking, or whatever it might be. And people appreciate that, and they and it's not necessarily that you're not being authentic, but just general respect for everybody is something that a lot of people appreciate, and that a lot of people aren't getting in other places, or like they're not getting like even if
Mm.
I don't necessarily give like, a whole lot of care about what they want to talk to me about. I'm going to be invested in the conversation in some degree, right? I'm going to, listen to them. I mean, it is like a version of like, it's like our version of the halal bartender. Like you're essentially a lot of these people's like, free counselor a lot of times too. So it's like just being invested in what, people are talking to you about. It goes a long way, and people really like that. And that helps with reviews because they think you're friendly. They think you're great to talk to. They feel comfortable in the space, regardless of whatever the individual's views might be or whatever it could be. So yeah,
Man, that's powerful. That reminds me. I mean, I still have a friend. Uh, he used to have courtside tickets to the Cavs, and when I was in Cleveland, we went to a couple of games. And I asked him, I was like, how much are these tickets? And it was something absurd, like
yeah,
$20,000 a piece or something. I was like, dude, why are you paying this much for like these seats? Because the seats, like honestly speaking, this is my opinion. So haters gonna hate, but this is how what I believe is like the seats courtside are actually not that good, right? Like in terms of view, it's actually probably better to be like a couple rows up so you could see everything that's happening,
yeah, yeah,
right? Because then like if you're like on courtside, like the first row, then yeah, like you can see everything. But like if you're like two rows back, it's like you have people in front of you, they may be standing up and stuff like that.
yeah,
It's like it's easy to get that view strike. So I was like, dude, why are you paying for this stuff? He's like, bro, I'm not paying for the view. He said, I'm paying for when I walk in the door, they know my name. I know the players by name. They know my daughter's name. The cheerleaders know me, right? And that's the same concept that you're bringing up. Is that like
yeah,
personal service, personalized service, and investing in understanding and caring for people? That is something that is universally like that. Will you can charge a really high premium when you have really
absolutely,
good service, right?
absolutely.
So just wanted to highlight that point here that you brought up. And I did want to spend
No
some
worries.
time talking about traversing tradition. So, for the audience that's not familiar with traversing tradition, can you give us a quick background to what this project is and
Yeah,
how and your involvement in it?
yeah. So Traversing Tradition, we're an online publication. Um, Honestly, it was started up by a bunch of students. All of us were, I think, almost all of us were in undergrad when we started this project. So it's an online publication. We're mostly writing articles, and the articles are about, looking at modernity and like the kind of all the issues that we're facing as a community or as a society, as a world. Through a Muslim lens. So really, trying to assess like these different things that are coming at us, specifically a lot of like the ideologies that we're dealing with, a lot of the isms that you hear about in like a lot of like spaces around either the university setting, in now it's getting more and more into mainstream. So like looking at all of these and like kind of how giving an avenue of how to navigate like how we go about all these different arenas and areas through a Muslim lens. So like how are we as a Muslim community supposed to respond to these things? How are we supposed to interact with these types of things? um, why might X ideology be harmful? And we've kind of expanded in terms of like the things that we talk about, in terms of like the content that we're doing now. But it started based off. We're not like a local starting organization, although a few of us actually do happen to live in Arizona. But um, most of us are based out of the U.S., across the U.S. or the U.K. We have a few people in other parts of the world too, but our board is made up mostly people from the U.S. Um, so basically, we started off on Twitter. Like that's literally how we
Mm.
started out. It was a bunch of people talking about Islam, history, politics, culture, trends, things like that. And we're like, okay, why don't we just turn this into something where we can actually like put our thoughts together in like a meaningful way, show it and like help, show it to people who also care about these types of things because like something like this didn't really exist in that sense. Like you had a lot of like there were like we were not the first like Muslim writing publication ever, right? There's tons of that before, but it's like you didn't really have ones that were like talking about the things that we started talking about. you didn't have like a lot of like even like scholarship talking about like what the things that are that a lot of people are wanting to be addressed. So it's like, okay, so all of us have like good links to people who are scholars. um we can ask for their opinions about what they think about this. We can ask them to check our work and stuff like that, make sure we're not saying anything like blasphemous or just out of line. Or basically kind of like uh you know letting people know like what does our tradition, what does our religion say about whatever it is that we're talking about in that instance. And now alhamdulillah, like it's grown a lot. We became an official nonprofit in 2019, so going strong for 2 years. We officially established though like as like a mainstay publication in 2018. So um but alhamdulillah, like it's grown a lot. Our staff has grown. A lot of the people on board. It's a diverse cast and crew of people from across the world. People with differing views, people with different backgrounds, but still like dedicated to the mission of that we're trying to push out.
I think what stood out to me when I was going through some of the articles and just the team in general is that how like I wouldn't be surprised if an organization like this popped up and everyone was in Phoenix, right? But like not a
Yeah,
knock on Phoenix, but like what I'm saying is like the organization actually has people all over United States and I mean like you mentioned UK as well. So question to you is like do you how did that happen, right? Like how are you getting these people to contribute in this mission in this project? Did it happen organically? Was it Twitter? Like, how did you convince people to start contributing their thoughts and ideas to this from all these different parts of the world?
yeah. It was very organic. So that's the thing that a lot of like organizations don't have when they start up is like you care, or like it's like all the people like they know each, like we all knew each other like before this all started, before we all came together. Like our original starting crew was like 19 people who were like invested in this project. um
That's a lot.
I think, yeah, 19. I mean, it's not necessarily that everyone was like the CEO, right? But it was like
Right, right, right.
we're all gonna write, we're all gonna edit, we're all gonna make this. It was just started off as just like a basic blog before like it became like a full fledged non-profit organization. But it did happen organically, like via Twitter, and that's the thing that Twitter can be. I mean, I don't. You're not on Twitter, right? Or
I recently created one,
Okay,
but
so you don't know how bad it can be, but but in terms of like the nice thing about it is that it helps you find people in your different corners of your interests, and like find people who have those similar interests that are aligned with you. And it's very easy to find people with similar morals, similar backgrounds, people who like talking about the things that you like talking about. So that's how it really started, is that we kind of all found each other like on Twitter, and like we're having these discussions, and then decided to put it all together. So it did happen organically. It wasn't like we're all gonna start an organization. No, this like we were talking about these things that we were gonna do, or we were talking about these things that we're currently writing about for like a year to 2 years. And then like the organization came to fruition after that. After it's like, okay, we're all talking about these things, but nothing's getting done. So maybe let's be more productive about what we're discussing. So that alhamdulillah, like it's been a great blessing for that.
now like I think what for the audience and for myself, like a really important point that you just brought up is that Twitter and social media can be a very powerful tool to connecting you with
Absolutely.
like-minded people, like-minded individuals that can help you, um, create a community where you can start doing things that are bigger than just yourself. So, and it can also be, you know, just a total waste of time. So
Yeah,
you got
yeah,
to be
absolutely.
intentional with what you're looking for and what you present of yourself, so you can find those people that connect with you. So you said it's a nonprofit now. Do you guys have paid staff now, or is it like everyone's still volunteering?
So everyone's still volunteering right now. I mean, the goal is to make it like this kind of like full fledged organization eventually. So that's kind of like the crossroads that we're at right now. It's like all of the people who are kind of originally invested in this project are kind of like going into like their careers that they were planning on doing. So it's
Hmm.
like everyone, it's like almost everyone is in grad school right now from like our original team, or like they're working like full time, or but they're still committed to the project. So it's like we eventually want to get to that level. So it's just trying to find a matter of how to take it to that level with like our current level of like investment with like these other things that we're involved in too. Like some people are in law school. We have some people who are in like I said, I'm in grad school. We have some people in med school. Um, so
Oh
it's like
man.
yeah, it's but mashallah, like I think that's the big thing about like the barakah of time and like investing in like good work is that the work still gets done regardless of like us all being strapped for time. Um, so we don't have any paid staff yet. We have some things that we pay for right now in terms of like fees and like either like projects that we're trying to get underway. But it's not like a cash cow right now or anything like that.
Hmm.
We're not raking in like a ton of money or stuff like that. Um,
It's
and
not a
like
where you been.
yeah, where you being will be in one day, inshallah. But
So,
like it's yeah. So right now it's not at that level. The goal is to eventually take it to that level. So whether that's like looking through different grants, fundraising, like more deliberate fundraising, because we've done fundraising in the past to kind of like cover our fees and stuff like that. But um, more so like deliberate fundraising for like okay, we have this specific project that we want to do, or we want to start paying, you know, ex employees. So we still have like a board, and they are technically staff, but they all are like volunteer.
hmm.
Like mashallah, like and it is like quite a few people who have like dedicated themselves to the project, completely free of charge. Like the entire like everyone who's on the team has done like a tremendous amount of work, mashallah, especially the people who've been here since the beginning. They're really like dedicated to like making this into something like worthwhile and long lasting.
And do you mind sharing? Like, do you guys get a decent amount of hits on the site?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Alhamdulillah, like every year we've increased our viewership. Um, every year we have increased like the kind of engagement online too in social media, and we're trying to like hit on different avenues too now. So it's like we're
mhm.
not just doing articles, or we're not just doing like long form articles. We'll do short articles too. We'll have poetry submissions too. We'll do video content. Like we've done a few like what do you call it, live streams. Like we've invited like scholars on and done live streams with them and like talk to them about certain things that we're talking about. Um, and like reaching out in different arenas, right? And we're still
Mm.
kind of exploring of like what's other arenas that we can kind of get into, like is a podcast in the midst in the future, right? Is more video content, stuff like that. But I mean, but despite us trying to diversify too, like the writing has stayed very like great, mashallah. It's been consistent, and consistently we've been increasing like our level of engagement and like viewership.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I want to just touch on here is that like I believe that writing is one of the most underappreciated skills
Absolutely.
like in the world. Like honestly, like if you are a good writer and that's a skill you have and you enjoy doing it, like the world is like at your feet. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
go out there and create whatever you want to create. Like all the basis of content creation is writing, right? Like
absolutely.
having an idea and then being able to put it into words and then from there, right, like you're able to draw traffic and then you can funnel it however you want. But
Sure.
um, like what you guys are doing is really noble work and really trying to change worldviews and inform and educate. So
Yeah.
it's good. We don't necessarily need all the writers trying to make a quick buck. So
Yeah.
that's good. But,
It kind
but
of
yeah,
goes back to talking about with where you being too, where it's like you have like people invested in the beginning, and you have people invest, even the people who are jumping in now who like want to be a part of like the organization's future. They want to contribute in ways just beyond what their title is. Like if they're a staff writer, they also want to volunteer in other ways and like do things to help out. So it's like you kind of are like creating that level of investment from like your like baseline employee And that's like a principle that's consistent across like every organization, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Zain, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If you're in the Phoenix area, you have to check out Where You Bean Coffee. And for Traversing Tradition, you can check it out from wherever in the world you are. All you need is a phone or a computer. I will leave both links in the show notes. Now, as always, I have my key takeaways from this episode, but before we get into that, I want to share a clip with you from our discussion with Amani Mahisen on branding a bakery.
It's definitely very challenging competing with, Costco or Sam's Club, because I sell my croissants probably one croissant for the price that they would sell 6 at, but they're also not making it by hand the way I am. They're probably not taking 3 days to make their product like I am. And they're not one person running a business like I am, But competing with Costco, competing with Sam's Club, competing with Meijer, trying to convince your clients to come to you instead, you got to sell your product. You got to believe in what you have, and you got to give free samples. It's the only way. And if they like your samples enough, they'll come by. They'll want to support the small business. And I say it very confidently because it's happened. I've stolen clients from Costco, and it's the biggest reward. It's such a great feeling to know that all the time and energy and effort that you're putting into one small product versus this giant corporation, and this person is willing to trust you.
If you enjoyed this episode with Zain, I am sure you'll enjoy the discussion with Amani. Check it out wherever you're listening to this podcast. It is episode number 27. Now, here are my key takeaways. Oftentimes, you'll see employees at small businesses are more bought into the mission of the business. This is because the owner takes the time to show their work ethic, and they have a good curriculum for their employees to learn. If you're the type of owner that only checks in once a week, you can't expect the employees to be much more bought in. And number 2, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get your name out there. Take advantage of the local scene, find out where your customers are hanging out, and go to them. And that is all for this episode. If you enjoyed this discussion, please consider leaving a review and sharing with a friend. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.